Welcome to the Divine Purpose Podcast, where we transport you along one of the more dynamic journeys of life. Have you ever been curious to know what it takes to become a successful leader? Or about knowing the secrets of life through the Bible? How about engaging in conversation where no topics are off limits? We will take you to new levels with guests who can help you grasp the importance of your calling. Now, here's your host, Eddy Dacius, founder of Dacius Facilities Management.
Hey everybody, this is Eddy Dacius. We're here for another episode. We have Darlene Gordon. She's a great person. She's interesting. She's going to tell us about her upbringing, her career, and we're going to have a great time with her. Darlene Gordon, how are you today?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm good. Thank you for being here with us in our podcast, the Divine Purpose Podcast. And we're going to go straight at you. What can you tell us about you?
You know, first of all, thank you for having me. I absolutely appreciated the invitation and have seen a couple of your broadcasts and just thankful to be on. I would say, in terms of telling you about myself, I am a daughter of two sociologists. My father was a sociologist professor, and my mom was a social worker. They're both retired now. I am a wife, and we have two beautiful children. Both of them, my husband was a college athlete, and my son played sports throughout his career in terms from middle school all the way to high school.
Wow.
And my daughter is an artist in heart, but in profession, she is a scientist. So she graduated with a degree in biology.
Wow. Woo. So you busy then?
Yeah.
Can I say that?
Yes.
All right, no, definitely. So one thing we like to ask our guests is, let's talk about your background. And I'm glad you mentioned about your father being a psychology teacher, college. Can you tell us more about you, the upcoming?
Sure. Growing up, I grew up in a household that was absolutely education was extremely important to them.
Wow.
As well as it was a sports family. You know, my mom played basketball when she was in high school, and she kind of had me and my sister into sports a great deal. My sister actually ended up on a golf scholarship to college. I was not that coordinated in any sport that she introduced me to, but but education is extremely important, and that's something that, you know, my husband and I actually put with our kids as well. Like there's no option but education.
So, and I'm glad you're talking about education and sports. So, can you have any recollection of like the three most challenging event in your life, either when you started or either now, or with your kids, with your parents?
Well, I would say one of the most challenging events was the birth of my son.
Oh, wow.
It was extremely challenging in the sense that, you know, they told me that you can go home. He's not coming. And as soon as I got home, he started coming. And so my husband ended up delivering our son. So
Whoa,
yeah.
Whoa, darling. Come on. All right. So let's take a break. Let's pump the break. So can you take us to that great event? I think it's a great event. It might be challenging, but it's a great event. So can you tell us more about it?
Sure. I mean, the hero in this event was actually my husband. He was very calm during the entire process, and yeah, we called 911, and they actually talked him through the delivery of our son.
Wow.
And yeah, in terms of challenging, and we made it through that challenge because he's 24 now. So
Oh man, that was great to hear because it's kind of similar to me. My mom was on her way to the hospital, but I couldn't wait,
yeah,
so I got to the car. So that's the way I was introduced to her in the car. So, and I can relate. So, is there any more challenges you can share with us today?
well, I would say, when you're trying to move through your career, there's lots of challenges that happen.
Yes.
Within your, and I would say one of the things that I've learned through the variety of challenges that I've had to go through in my career is that the foundation for helping me get through it has
Yes.
been God.
Wow.
It has absolutely has been God. And I would say that in the sense that there were times that I tried to do it without him and times
Yes.
that I tried to do it with him, and the ones that I did without him did not turn out as well.
Yes.
Definitely did not turn out as well. So
Wow. So let's go to high school. If we can go back to that period, like where high school. This is a question I like to ask people. What was your dream in
okay.
high school? What was your dream job in high school?
So my dream job in high school actually came all the way from elementary to high school. And
Wow.
for the longest time I wanted to be an attorney and eventually um, take that skill and become the president of the United States. That's what I
Yes.
wanted.
Wow. That's wow. Wow.
That's what I wanted. Once I got into college, um, I actually majored in public law and government because I was still pursuing that particular dream to become an attorney. I learned a lot of things, and one I would say is my superpower is being analytical and problem solving. I am a puzzle person, so I would
Wow.
say, at this point, um, I would say my dream job is being an athletic director. Um,
Hmm.
but I would also want to say to your audience is that your dreams evolve, and that there's something that you hit a dream, you achieve it. That doesn't mean you stop dreaming.
Hmm.
So right now, my dream is to be an athletic director.
Wow.
Um, and then once I achieve that, and I think achieving that in this special time frame, where college athletics is changing tremendously, our
Yes.
society is changing tremendously. I think it's important to have leaders in place that can help navigate that change. And when you have a leader that is navigating it through the lens of how God says people should be a leader,
Okay.
that makes a big difference. And I
Hmm.
think that's what I want to be able to do.
So, what was the dynamic growing up in a family like yours, where it's education driven, sport driven? Can you share with us what was the dynamic of that household?
Sure. So, my father, he has two girls, and his thing was he wanted his girls to be strong.
Yeah.
My mom wanted her girls to be strong, and he always said, "Go for it," and so did my mother. So when it came to my father's nickname for me was a sapphire, and he said that's a precious jewel, but it's also somebody that doesn't take a lot of stuff,
Yeah.
and you really have to. And that's something that they really instilled in both me and my sister Amber, is that you don't take a lot of stuff, but you're to be kind
Yes.
to people, but you don't let things get in your way to where you're trying to get to go.
Hmm. Wow. That was powerful. Very powerful. So let's go back to you finish high school. Now you get to college. What was the process?
So getting into college, actually my first school I went to was Spelman College, and I chose Spelman at HBCU. Um, I got to visit it, and it was an all girls school, and I had come from an all girls Catholic school, and so I
Okay.
thought, you know, this is where I wanted to be, and I would say it was a positive. Looking back on it, it was a very positive experience. I mean. Shout out to HBCUs in the sense that they do a tremendous job in preparing our Black and Brown students into being able to be leaders and strong leaders when they come into industry. And I think, enough can't be said about that. Um, However, I ended up transferring to Eastern Michigan University, which is where I got my bachelor's degree.
Okay.
And attending there, number one, got me closer to home because
Okay.
I wanted to be closer to home. And number two, I got some really great professors there and administration that took a shine to me and really helped with my leadership development. And so um, both I think were extraordinarily important in my development. Um, And I think there's something to be learned from both segments,
Okay.
whether you go to an HBCU or a WPI. You know, I'm thankful I went to both because having the mix helped me move forward.
Okay. Wow. But so what's the most what is the most thing you are proud of accomplished? If you can share that with our audience.
From a personal side, I'm really very thankful that I have a successful marriage. I've been married for 27 years.
Yes.
Um, we've got two children, a boy and a girl that
Wow.
uh, both have finished college. I mean, and he and
Yeah.
my husband and I are extremely still in love with each other. So
Yeah.
I think, that's a success because I've seen some marriages fall by the wayside that,
Yeah. All right.
couldn't make it through. From a professional side of things, I would say I'm most proud of being able to um, see puzzles
Okay.
and not be pigeonholed by it has to be solved this one particular way.
Hmm.
And I think sometimes we get really pigeonholed into like the only way to solve something is
Wow.
based on how we solved it in the accounting industry or in I don't know.
No, like
I know
no, I
sports.
understand what you're saying. And
Yeah.
let's go deeper on that because I think you had a great position to tell us more about what do you think allow you to keep your marriage, keep your family, and now you can be grateful of all things went.
Well, I would say, it goes back to, lots of people will tell you how to have a success, and there's tons and tons of books about it, and then society tells you what it's supposed to be. And I would say it's up to the two people that's in it to
Yes.
make sure to make it the way that it needs to be. My
Yeah.
kids grew up watching um, their parents navigate something that was very different.
Okay.
I grew up in a family that was very traditional, that my dad did traditional roles and my mom did a traditional role, although she was a professional, had a professional career.
Yep.
My kids grew up seeing my husband do laundry and iron
Yeah.
and so my husband watched all sports, including women's sports. And, I think that's something that
Yeah.
really helped my son because my son, especially when he was very young, was very chauvinist and thought girls only were supposed to do certain things.
Oh wow.
you
Yeah.
know, so
Wow.
him watching his mom work in sports and his dad, work in
Mm,
management, and then watching his dad do laundry, and because I traveled a lot in my job, my husband was the one to take my kids to lots of events, and so he didn't my kids didn't have a choice but to see us sharing the load versus saying that there had to be traditional roles.
mm. Ooh, darling, you did a great job on explaining this, and I like it. But I will go deeper and ask you now. I never hear this. Preferences, if they're watching sports, it's just men only or girls only. It's been to combine both and then to help your. Did he do it on purpose, or it was just naturally for him to do that?
It was just naturally. My husband was an athlete, and so he understands the work that it takes to get to that level. And it's not a male or female. If you have a woman getting a scholarship or playing collegiate athletics,
Yes,
sometimes they worked hard to get
they
there.
work hard. Yes.
They worked
Wow.
hard to get there. That's really the point.
Yes, you're right. And for me, being because I coach too, so I coach soccer
Hmm.
and I coach basketball in the private
Okay.
sector, and I you can see the dedication. You can see the dedication on some kids where they really focus on getting better. So let's switch to what was your favorite childhood memory?
Oh, so we're in the right time frame for that. Christmas is my favorite childhood memory. Christmas for me was just magical. Just
Okay.
magical. Being, waiting to find out what Santa's going to bring you, the anticipation. My parents did an awesome job in making sure that that season was extremely magical.
Wow.
Um, and so I know I tried to do that with my kids, and even at this point, um, I still want it to be magical because it is a blessing to be able to make it um, to this point in the year,
Yes.
to be
Yep.
able to celebrate your triumphs and reflect on some of your challenges, so you can go into the new year right and be able to again thank God that He got you this far. To me, it's a time to pay homage for that, and so
Yeah, definitely.
it's yeah, yeah.
So
I
you
Christmas
see
is
Christmas?
it.
Yeah.
Christmas.
All right. So let's go now. We're talking about you being the. So what's your title now? I don't want to make mistake on it. So what's your title now? I know you are
So
athletic director.
So I was interim athletic director at UMass Boston. I
Mm.
am currently associate AD at UMass Boston, working on projects regarding Title IX and human resource types of issues of onboarding. So that's what I'm doing right now.
Wow. How excited is that for you?
So, we're coming up on the 50th anniversary of Title IX. And so that is something that is extremely important uh, for a variety of reasons. Title IX, for the most part, has been linked primarily with athletics, but it's an educational piece. And it's about providing opportunities for women in all areas of higher education. And
Mm.
that is something that is extremely important because, what we do know for sure is that diversity in thought and ideas does not just come from the male gender. It comes
Yeah.
from everybody. And so if we are not providing opportunities for our girls, minorities, anybody.
Yep.
It's an issue, and so that's something that's extremely important to me, because you can find greatness everywhere if you look for it and
Yes.
provide the resources for it.
So, can you share with us what Title IX is?
Sure. Title IX is an amendment that came through that is a federal law that allows women to get equal access to opportunities in higher education. It all has pieces regarding um, protecting women from sexual harassment and a negative work environment. So, um, again, it's definitely something that is extremely important to society, and as you can see, prior to the pandemic, the Me Too movement that was blossoming
Yes.
is a result of people ignoring that Title IX and ignoring the penance of it and the meaning of it, and thinking that women can be treated in any fashion. And I think, it's important. It's unfortunate, I think, number one, that we have to have a law to say you need to treat women equally,
Equally, yes.
um, because I think if we look at people as humans, then we should be treating them as such and
Yeah.
not making it a category. At least that's my opinion. Like, what is, the fact that we have to have laws to say you need to treat women appropriately, you need to treat people with disabilities appropriately, that you need to treat minorities appropriately. That just, I've struggled
Yes.
to understand why that is the case, because we're all part of the human family, and let's
Yes.
treat each other with
Wow.
kindness and grace.
So let's talk about this picture now. This picture of you where you're standing, and that's a nice picture. I like it a lot. Can
Thank
you
you.
tell our audience about it?
Well, I wanted to have something that, shows, the strength and beauty of of women in athletics,
Yes.
and so we are absolutely, a force to be reckoned and a force that is needed within, you know, the sports industry, period.
Mm.
Uh, because we add something that our male counterparts don't. And this is not to say that we're looking to replace them. We're
Okay.
we're looking to make the table bigger
Bigger.
so that we can all fit at the table.
Wow. So what's the best compliment you ever gotten?
Best compliment. Wow. I get a lot of them from my husband, so I appreciate those. Um, I would say the compliment that I've gotten is uh, people like my strength.
Oh wow.
My strength. I
Do you
will
believe
say
you can
also
tell me
that
why?
even with that being a compliment, there are people who don't like your strength, and
Yeah.
so it's about standing on who you are and embracing your own core values, because if you don't, you can definitely be led astray, and you come off the path that God has for you. So
Wow. You know, we call this embracing your calling in this podcast. That's how we
mhm.
call it. Embracing your calling whenever you get to that level. But for you, what was the process to embrace your calling?
Process. Well, I will say, Eddie, I was hard headed, to be honest with you. I was very hard headed,
Most people are.
because
I
because
never, I
I
never had, I never heard any guest saying this was freely accepted. It was a challenge
yeah,
from the air.
yeah,
So let's go ahead.
yeah. I remember being in a um I was with the Patriot League at
Okay.
the time, and that's, I would say, is when it was really challenging. And you know, and I will have to give a shout out to my boss at the time, Carolyn Schlie-Fimovich. I mean, I learned a great deal from her in the sense that, you know, it was a difficult time for me.
Okay.
And a difficult time, you learn some things, and um, it has informed how I function today, um, and how I move forward um, through the world. I was looking for some things when I was at the Patriot League, and I kept hearing God saying certain things to me, like, I need you to do this.
Hmm.
And I was like, God, if I do this, I won't be able to work in sports again. I won't be able to work in sports again. So
Wow.
I can't do that. And he kept saying, yeah, I still need you to do this. And
Is that
when
funny that we keep fighting it, and it's like there's no effort in terms of the response is the same. I
yeah,
want you to do this, and
that's
all the
right.
excuses you give, it just doesn't matter because well, your purpose is what your purpose is.
That's right. No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And for me, that was a turning point, because from that point forward, I began to really study in the Bible what is leadership, and what does he call you to do as a leader. And doing that, and in following that in my path, has been extremely important, because it's not easy to be a leader.
No.
It's definitely not for the faint of heart. And when you lean on what he asks you to do, you have solace in that, and you know that you're doing the right thing, even if it doesn't work out the way you think it was supposed to work out.
Mm. So
And
what was?
so,
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. What was your what was your expectation then? Because
So, you know, like, for instance, you know, sometimes we think when we're doing what God asks us to do, that it's going to have a happy ending.
yeah,
And sometimes it does not. But it was something that still was required of you.
yes,
And so, you know, although it is not the happy ending that you were expecting, it's still the right ending, because he's still setting you up for something, to for the next step in the journey for you, because we're still here. And
yeah.
if we're still here, there's still more to do.
Mm.
You know, in the Bible, it talks about, and you know, I'm not good at addresses in the Bible, so, you know, forgive me for that. But there's a story where he sends some apostles to a town, and nobody
Yes,
in the town wanted to listen to him.
yes,
And then he tells them, and that was still a mission, and that's a mission that didn't have a happy ending. But he tells them, knock the dust off your shoes and leave
yes,
that dust there,
yep.
and go to your next assignment.
Yeah. Wow.
And so sometimes that is the case.
Yes, you're right. And so one thing I was thinking, and what will be a piece of advice you will give to someone who's starting to embrace their calling? And we all agree it's a challenge. Nobody wants to do it. But what would be the advice you give them?
I would say, you know, still embrace it. You know, anything that is worth having is worth fighting for, is worth being uncomfortable from time to time to get there.
Yeah.
And I would also say that, you know, one of the other lessons that I learned when I said I didn't want to do that is that I stayed in the struggle a lot longer than I had to stay.
Yes. Wow.
And so, that would be my advice. Go ahead and embrace it
Embrace
so
it.
you can get through versus, kind of struggling
Yes.
and going around in a circle and not getting through.
Yeah, it's like this is your door, and you're going around the circle, and that's your exit. You're not taking it. You're not going
Exactly.
anywhere. That's your door. You have to pass through. And so let's switch to. Can you tell us about the people who influence you so far, or people you will consider as a mentor?
Sure. Well, I've talked about some of them already. As my family
Yeah.
has have a strong influence over me. Um, but then there's people and then there's characters on television that sometimes influence who you are. And one of my favorites is watching Madam Secretary. I know it's off the air now,
Yeah.
but I really enjoy that series
Yeah.
because it was great watching a really strong woman
Women.
have the family because she was married
Yeah.
in this series, and she had a very powerful position, and she navigated both her professional life and her personal life, and it was messy.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
that's what sometimes we think it's not supposed to be messy,
Wow.
and it can be messy, and everybody wants to go through their thing in a straight line. And it's definitely not a straight line. We have twists and turns, and we have stagnant moments. And, that's, I would say, and she shows that in this series. And so I absolutely love that series.
So, but let's switch to that too now. Um, can you recommend a few movies to our listeners, to our audience? Like movies you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Right.
So, my all time favorite movie is Guess Who's Coming to Dinner with
Wow.
Sidney Poitier. I love that
Yeah, that's a good
movie
movie. Yeah.
because when you think about the time frame in which that movie was set, the dialogue in that movie, the strength of the characters in that movie,
Yep.
that's my favorite
Wow.
movie. Um, and then you can't not have Black Panther as one of the movies that you love. So that's another movie that I love that movie because it shows possibilities to not only our children but to people in general.
Okay. Wow. Any book you will recommend to our audience? Any
Yes.
books?
I would say there's a book called Fierce Conversation.
Mm.
It's a really good book in the sense that it will put you face to face with how you not only communicate but how you live.
Yes.
So, for example, the book talks about making your words and actions match. It's not just about having a serious conversation with somebody, it's about how you walk through the world. And, many of us walk through the world doing what Shonda Rhimes likes to call athlete speak, where you just kind of you have a script of what it is that you need to say about
Yep.
something. It may not be how you're feeling about it. It may not be how you believe about it, but it's a script that is acceptable to society
Yep.
of what you're saying. And this book, it talks about matching.
Hmm.
And if you're going to say that you love being around your family, but nobody can ever see you at a family function.
Yeah. Something's
You
wrong, right?
know, yeah, something is not right, and it's nothing wrong with saying something else.
Yeah.
Just let your words match. So if you're really not a family person, you might want to take that out of your vocabulary and put something in that's actually what you like doing
Yeah.
versus saying it because you think that's what people want to hear.
Yeah. Pretending, right?
Exactly.
So, and I'm glad you mentioned that. And I think there is an article talking about people in the workplace not showing the true self. I don't know if you want to touch about that, where who they are. There might be a lot of factors influencing them to do it: race, social equity. I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit, or if you ever experienced that.
Well, it goes back to, again, the book I mentioned. It's really important for your words and actions to match. So there are corporations and businesses across the country that have these beautiful mission statements. But then when you go into the culture of the company or institution, they don't match.
Yeah.
And so you end up, there's, like, you're talking about articles about companies and their culture not being positive. The question is, do we have the right people in the right spots? Because they always say that people leave companies not because of the company, but because of people.
Yeah.
And so if we take that statement to be true, then who do you have in these spots that aren't living up either to the mission, or does the mission need to be changed so you can match the people that's there?
Yeah. And right now too, this is we had that conversation yesterday in a podcast with a guest, and she was talking about her name is Grace Ann Johnson.
Okay.
The Great Resignation. And you see a lot of people leaving work, and I don't know if you can touch on that.
Well, I think that's why people are leaving. I think the pandemic, as horrible as it has been, it has taught us some things, some really great lessons in terms of, is it possible to do your job from home? Is it possible to do it in a hybrid situation? Do we need managers that are going to micromanage and nitpick over everything? Are we treating our workforce the way that they are asking to be treated? And I think the Great Resignation is a symbol of people saying, okay, there's certain things I don't have to tolerate anymore.
Yeah. So people are finding the freedom. But my follow-up question would be, so I think it's getting a trend. Yes, a lot of people are feeling frustrated with work. They're looking for freedom, flexibility to be with their family. But don't you think that some other people are taking advantage of that situation too?
Well, I think, in any situation, even before we had to work from home, there were people taking advantage of the situation.
Yes.
And so again, that goes back to management style.
Yeah.
Just because someone is taking advantage of it, let me just back up a little bit. One of the things that when my husband and I were raising our kids, they did not like was we treated them separately. Meaning the things that we felt our daughter Kennedy needed were the things that we wanted to give her, which may have been completely different than what my son Michael needed. Okay. And so, my kids used to really get upset about that. Well, if Michael got his How come I didn't get it? Well, you don't even want that.
Oh wow.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
why would I give that to you? And it's the same, I think, and I'm not calling the workforce children, but I think it's about treating people as individuals. There are some people that thrive on having a manager that's going to micromanage. There are others that don't. And
Yeah.
as a manager or supervisor or leader, you need to be able to switch up based on who it
Mm.
is that you're dealing with.
But and I'm glad this is great. This is allowed me to transition to sports because and we see that a lot in sport where I'm not saying I'm against it, but I feel like as a coach, you expect every player, athlete player to or student athlete to embrace, work hard, but they feel like some parents encouraging everybody need to get a trophy when they don't deserve it. Like the losing team get a trophy, the winning team get a trophy. Nobody, everybody equal. I don't know if that's the right mentality, but compared to just what you just said with the way you and your husband raise your kid, where everybody have different needs, you treat them differently. Is that the same
Mhm.
mentality?
I think it's the I think it needs to be the same mentality. First of all, I'm not the parent that believed everybody should get a trophy,
Yeah.
because when you actually put them in the real world, everybody is not getting raised
Yes.
when you go to work. Everybody is not getting a promotion when you go to
Yeah.
work,
Everybody's
and
not getting the same salary.
everybody's not getting the same salary. You're absolutely right. And so I think we do our kids a disservice when we don't prepare them to navigate when everybody's not getting a trophy.
Yeah.
Everybody's not getting those things. And so, how do they function when it's time for them to go into college or into high school, or wherever it is they're going? How are they able to navigate and function and come out on the other side if they don't know, if they don't put in the work, they don't notice or nurture their gifts or whatever it happens to be, that they're not going to be successful?
Yeah. Um, but sorry to go back and forth in this subject, and I like it. It's just now thinking about okay. So I have two kids. My son Jovan, Leah is my daughter. So the same way you just mentioned, you have kids. They have different personality, different needs.
Mhm.
So did you ever had a chance to give your son something and you didn't give your daughter, or you give them things differently at the same time? I don't know if you wanna kind of clarify it and what was the thought process for doing this.
Well, I think, you know, it depended. So there were times that I gave them something different at the same time, and there were times I gave one something and didn't give the other one anything.
Okay.
So there was no consistency, I guess,
Wow.
in that. Like every time I gave my son something, I gave my daughter something, and vice versa. Because that's not how life is either.
Yes. Wow. And I'm glad. And in this period of holidays, gift, so some parents probably gonna benefit from this because uh, I can't have the recollection where they have to give both kids a gift, even they didn't plan to do that. But I'm glad you clarified. So let's switch to you get into your current job now.
Okay.
And can you tell us, take us all everything started? What was the transition? And please share with us what was the struggle too. I know it can be a struggle situation where a lot of people still don't understand. And I think you touch on it: women in power or women in great opportunities. I think when you talk about the Title 9, so I don't know if you can talk about it more in terms of your current job right now.
So, sure. I just to kind of give a little background, I didn't come from the traditional pathways into athletics. I actually owned my own business for a while, for about 11 years. I assisted physically challenged people find employment and training opportunities. I then moved into, after doing that, I moved into college athletics and the conference office and associations. And so, which is again still different from how others have got into it. Many of my colleagues have been either student athletes or coaches,
Yep.
and then move from there into administration and so on. So I'm still really developing my path, and I think
Okay.
that is something that people really need to be clear about, is that you're still in the process of developing your path. And so
Okay.
going for, because I remember when I was in a conference office and looking to go on campus, there were times, campus who were making the decision on the campus positions felt like, but you're coming from a conference office, we're not sure that you would understand us. And then, even before then, when I was doing my my own business, people didn't understand how I can go from there into a conference.
Okay.
So, I think that the thread in all of the positions for me has been, trying to prove to people that you can make transition into other areas. So I
Okay.
went from owning my own business to a conference office, from a conference office to a campus. And so, that's really where I am now on campus. And there's, positive things about being on campus, and there's positive things about being in the conference office. And, I would say I wouldn't give anything for my journey or path, because one of the things that helps me navigate and solve issues is that I can pick from a variety of different areas and find best practices and transfer them in.
Okay.
And so that's kind of how I see what I'm doing now, is being able to take some best practices and figure out how to meld them into sport from, let's say, um, transportation.
Okay.
Which is,
Yeah.
it's crazy, but there are best practices. One of the things you asked about, something that I was really proud of from a professional standpoint, I remember I was with the Mid-American Conference and NACTA at the time, and I was doing the transportation for the women's Final Four that was
Okay.
being hosted in Cleveland. And part of my role was to find drivers that would be able to use the NCAA had a partnership with Enterprise,
Okay.
and they delivered rental cars that we needed to find drivers for, to be able to take some of the people that were part of our organizing committee that were flying in, so that they could navigate the city.
Okay.
And you don't want anybody behind the wheel of a car. You can't just take any any driver, you know what I mean? And so I ended up accessing school bus drivers, because number one, they have to have background checks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Number two, because you can't have anybody driving the kids around. They
No.
have to be familiar with the city,
Yes.
So those were the volunteers that I recruited. And when they found out about, that's how I went about recruiting our drivers, it became a best practice
Wow.
that they wanted to utilize school bus drivers for that portion of the transportation for the Final Four. And so again, it's about, because I was able to pull from other segments of my life of best practices.
Yes.
It didn't have to just come from athletics, but it's something that helped athletics.
No, makes sense. Makes sense. And I appreciate you sharing this. So one thing I would like to maybe help me understand.
Okay.
Were you comfortable? Because the reason I ask is because I know diversity in sport for women, it's women are still considered minority in the sport industry. So how was it for you to embrace your role and strive in your knowing that?
Well, I would say it comes with time, and really embracing who you are and what you bring to the table. As a woman in athletics, there will be many times that you may be the only one at the table, that is a female, or you may be, one or two at the table.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that you use your voice, because your voice is the one that's missing from the table, and be okay with it. I think that's extremely important, because sometimes we can get at the table and then not use our voice, and people just kind of, because you're not using it, they begin to ignore it, and then you're just at the table, taking up space.
Oh wow, that's funny what you said, because yesterday again we have a great guest and she was talking about your voice matter. Your voice matter, and they need to understand what you want and in terms of sharing your experience. Now I think it's a great time to switch to hot topic. Hot topic now with all right, so now I'm gonna put you on the hot seat. So
Okay.
it's women's soccer better than men's soccer?
Oh, that is a hot seat right there.
I know.
That's a hot
I
seat.
warn you.
Okay, so I am an absolute fan of women's soccer.
Yeah.
I feel like those women have opened the door for, some serious conversation on and off the field.
Yes.
And I think I'm not really sure how I want to say this, but what I will say is that this goes back to the words and actions matching, in my opinion, because we say that the reason women's sports don't get X, Y, and Z regarding pay or publicity or marketing or resources is because they don't have the same notoriety as men's sports. And women's soccer has proven that they can hit those benchmarks.
Yeah.
And now they want to move them again. And they're like, wait a minute, you said the words were they needed to hit these benchmarks, and they hit them. So then if those are the benchmarks, then you need to put up or shut up. You know what I mean? You need to go, because those women deserve everything. Everything. Yeah,
I'm sorry to put you in a hot seat.
you put me in the hot seat on that one.
Yeah, you're the best to insert, right? You see both, and you are involved in that's your industry. And so one thing I can ask again is, I feel like there's me personally being a soccer coach, a basketball coach. So I used to coach at Milton Academy. So now I'm at Taylor Academy coaching basketball, JV, and soccer JV. Okay. I see the skill set. I think the women are getting angrier Like they want it more. I don't know if that's the same thing you see, and that's kind of drive them to produce more. Would you agree to that statement?
Well, I think, you know, there were times we were shown that we couldn't express our emotions the same way that men are allowed to express theirs. And so now we're actually expressing our emotions and showing fire and passion and sometimes anger.
Yeah.
And people aren't used to us being able to explore those types of emotions. And so they think it's like, whoa, what's going on? We've had them all along and just haven't been allowed to actually show them.
Okay. So, is there a question you wish I asked you today?
You know what? You have had me on the hot seat the whole time. So I would say,
I'm
you
sorry.
did a fantastic. I have enjoyed myself, and I absolutely appreciate you having me on here.
To be honest, it's a joy for me to interview people and to talk with them. I feel like I didn't know you before, and you have a glimpse of who I am. I have a glimpse of who you are. I already see who's your husband, your family, the way you describe them, and I think people will relate to your story, and this story will bring people together, allow them to embrace their calling. So, last word for you, Darlene.
Well, I want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a blessed New Year, and definitely embrace your calling and be okay with being uncomfortable. Be okay with being uncomfortable because you will make it through. You will absolutely make it through.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. Darling. This was a great interview. So we learned a lot with Darlene Gordon, and she's authentic. The way she's talking and her job and in the community, it's great. So we appreciate you coming in, taking the time to be with us. This is Eddy Dacius with Divine Purpose Podcast. We have a great show with Darlene Gordon. Stay tuned. We'll see you guys soon. Thank you, Darlene.
Thank you so much.